So just when you thought there was no more to talk about in the world of the MCU, the man himself, Kevin Feige, comes along and blesses us with an entire article from, I believe it was Variety or Deadline. Either way, I'll be posting pictures of his quotes in this video, so you'll be able to see that. But yeah, basically, he did this long interview, and they had this long article that they posted with so many things. And this was originally going to be one video going over everything. But honestly, guys, with all the stuff that he reveals and talks about, I can think of minimum 2 to 3 videos I can make on, some of these topics alone. To give you a quick, rundown of what we'll be going over in this video today, it talks about Secret Wars, the plans for the MCU going forward, and kind of how far ahead they have planned everything. So I wanted to talk about what he said, what it could mean, and not what it could mean, I guess, but how I interpret it, where I think it'll go. Because what he talks about in this specific part of the interview is something that I have been saying and speculating for years. I mean, I know for a fact it's in one of my previous videos, and my friends of all people would definitely know I've been a big advocate that this will be the path or the course that they take moving forward. Now, what is that? That is, Kevin Feige says Avengers Secret Wars is planned to, quote, reset singular timelines and reboot the MCU. And this isn't really something we could, we have to theorize on. It's pretty cut and dry. I mean, they're going to reboot the MCU after Secret Wars or during Secret Wars, maybe by the end of it, I would assume. Either way, this is huge news because the MCU has obviously, as you guys know, been the biggest, the longest stretching, interconnected storyline or universe with, how do I put it? Not the same storyline, but, the same world, in movies. They have, I believe, over 30 at this point. It's been going for over a decade. It's just a very impressive franchise of movies. But as many of you also probably know, there has been a few misses, and a few might be putting it lightly depending on who you are and how the content has hit you. But there's definitely been a few misses here and there in recent times, whereas it felt like for a long stretch of time there, the MCU literally could not miss. I mean, they could give you a movie about a talking raccoon and aliens and a talking tree, and it would make a shit ton of money, and a lot of people would go see it and love it. So it is kind of unfortunate to see, how they've fallen off in certain regards. But this does give me a lot of hope, and this is where I kind of saw things going. Now, I would always talk with my friends about this, especially when they actually revealed that, the 2 Avengers movies they were doing were Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. Now, a lot of people, when that got revealed, they were very upset about that because they were like, what are you rushing this for? You're giving us Doctor Doom out of nowhere. You're giving us the Secret Wars movie when it feels like we haven't really earned it. You'll have to excuse the train in the background. I unfortunately live near one, so it's kind of unavoidable. But anyways, they were upset that we were getting Secret Wars so quick because as opposed to, say Infinity War and Endgame, that felt earned, where we built up to those 2 movies over the course of, like I mentioned earlier, a decade. You've gotten time with all these characters, you've seen their relationships, both the good and bad sides, and you know fully where they're at, and you have an idea of where they should be going in order for it to feel satisfying as a viewer. But now the MCU is in such a state that I even made a video theorizing what the new Avengers team will look like, which sounds crazy considering we don't have a legitimate Avengers team, and we're going into 2 Avengers movies, both of which will for sure be the biggest, team-up style movies we've gotten to this point. Because you have movies like Deadpool and Wolverine, which brings in pretty crazy characters like Blade and Elektra. And you have movies like Spider-Man, who unite all the Spider-Men. But if you guys know anything about these movies and what is honestly outright been announced, I was going to say theorized, but it's just been announced, like, the cast for this is going to be insane. I mean, I wasn't one of those people who sat through the entire, like, 6-hour live stream and watched Marvel pan to a new director's chair every 15 minutes, but if you were, or if you've seen pictures from that event, you know the cast is already gigantic for just Doomsday, the Doomsday Avengers movie. And that cast involves pretty much all of the original, like, living Fox X-Men, the actors who are still alive and with us. And if that's any indication, then, and if you know anything about the comics, you know Secret Wars will be somehow bigger than that. And I have been telling my friends, because I'm kind of the resident, like, superhero nerd in my friend group. And, you know, when they ask me, they're like, well, what do you think they're going to do for the next, like, Avengers? And I'm like, honestly, especially when I heard it was Secret Wars, I'm like, you could just pretty much expect literally every Marvel character you've seen in, like, live action, pretty much. Maybe even some animation. But in this same interview, Kevin Feige discussed and did mention that they're not allowed to touch the character of Miles Morales. Like, they're not allowed to use him. At least until those Spider-Verse movies are over, which, if you know anything about that, no end in sight, honestly. It was supposed to be released in 2024, and now it's, like, projected for 2027. So, you know, do with that what you will. But either way, I always told my friends, I'm like, yeah, honestly, every single Marvel character you can imagine, from live action, that is, TV shows and movies, you could probably assume they will be in this movie as long as that actor or actress is still alive. And that's crazy, and it's so cool, because as a kid, I mean, this is the stuff you dream of. Like, if you guys were anything like me, you know, you would just dump out all your toys on the carpet and just create a cinematic event right then and there. And it wouldn't make any sense, because you'd have Batman fighting a Transformer, or, you know, Captain America and Spider-Man teaming up against, like, the Predator. I don't know. Like, it's you just mash everything together. And some people, when they hear stuff like this, they think of something like that, and in a bad way, thinking, you know, it's going to be really messy and really not done very well, and just kind of a cash grab. And that's what I've seen a lot of people say about the Robert Downey Jr. casting, saying it is a cash grab. I have my own opinion on that and my own theories, and I don't think it is just a cash grab. Robert Downey Jr. has too much respect for the legacy of his character of Iron Man. He knows what he's doing, and honestly, I do not think... I mean, the man does not need the money. He's not doing it for the money. So there's definitely a deeper reasoning there behind him doing it. But that being said, I think everybody's concerns are valid, especially, as I mentioned, with the previous history recently of Marvel's, like, you know, quality, I guess, of output. So that type of stuff is fair, but this movie is going to be an event, and honestly, I have a lot of faith. Now, like I mentioned, to bring it back around to this article, this is something I've been talking to my friends about, and my wife a lot, is, you know, I do think there's going to be a big reset once they release this movie. And I said that as soon as they announced this, because, as I know, many of you may know, the Secret Wars comics, that's exactly what it acts as. It acts as a reboot, because in comic books, everything can get very messy and very chaotic. And comic books tend to do events like this to where they can just kind of wipe the slate clean. Like DC had one in the Rebirth run, where everything was so messy. A lot of characters that people loved were dead, and they couldn't find a way to bring them back logistically. So you know what? They just said, screw it. We're going to reset everything. We're going to give you guys everybody you like, but give you new takes on the characters. So if you love the characters and you want to see more stories from them, great, jump in. If you haven't seen any of this and you don't know any of the comics, but you don't know where to start, this is a perfect jumping off point for every one of these characters. You don't know where to start with Superman? Start here. Batman? Start here. Flash? Here. You know, like, each character got their own, like, reboot and their rebooted comic run, so it could create new fans and still keep around the old ones that were, you know, tethered to these characters. And I think that's exactly what the MCU needs and is going to do, because, you know, as you guys may know, things get a little chaotic. You have all these TV shows that you need to watch, and all these special events, and a lot of people feel like this stuff has started to turn into like homework for the MCU, where it's like, okay, so to watch the new Deadpool and Wolverine, I have to watch 2 seasons of television, 13 movies. It's like, I'm not saying that's exactly the number of stuff you have to watch, but all I'm saying is like, that is that's not even an opinion, that is a valid fact. And I feel like for me, that didn't really ring home to me so much, because I've just automatically followed the MCU. So for me, I'm like, what's the big deal? But if you look at it from an outside point of view, you're like, damn, no, you're right. Because like, say I just wanted to go watch a Doctor Strange movie because it looks cool, but then you have people telling you, yeah, you're gonna need to watch this show, this other show, like two episodes of this show, this handful of movies. Like, at that point, you might as well go tell people to read the comic books or something. Like, it's legitimately homework, and it's a lot to keep up with. And that's where a cinematic universe gets messy, because it's so cool to have everything interconnected, and so cool to be going for so long and to be so successful. But with that success comes like these kind of complications where it's like, yeah, but when is too much, or is there a way to do it where you can balance both, where it's like you have an ongoing history of however long, but people could still jump into certain points, or they don't have as much homework to do. It's kind of impossible to do that, honestly. Not impossible, but I will say like very difficult, where it's like, yeah, it's doable, but it's not, ideal. And especially with the point the MCU is at right now, they need a reset and a reboot. They just do. Now, something else I want to touch on is, I mentioned before, I used to just dump all my toys out and go crazy, but truly one of the things I've always dreamed of in the MCU, and I've always wondered how they're going to do, is I've always wanted to see my favorite teams of heroes unite. Like, I used to play this game, you guys may know it, Marvel's Ultimate Alliance, and in that game, they have almost literally every Marvel character you can think of. Like, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, the Inhumans, the Avengers, Spider-Man, like the street-level heroes. I mean, they have everybody. And it's kind of, reminiscent of the newer game Marvel Rivals. How they have so many characters in that. And a lot of them are obscure characters. Something I've always wanted in live action and in movies was to see all of those, my favorite people, team up. I want to see the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and the Avengers and like Spider-Man have a conversation. That's just something I've dreamed of. And I've always thought, like, in my head, I'm like, okay, if I could pluck my perfect team, it's obviously the ones I grew up with. So like, the 2005 Fantastic Four, the original X-Men team from like the first and second movies with like, Hugh Jackman and all them, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, Chris Evans' Captain America, like the original 6 or 7 Avengers. Like, that would be ideal for me. And it kind of sucks because Endgame was so bittersweet because of that, because I've always wanted to see that interaction. And when that was coming out, I heard that we were getting Fantastic Four and X-Men in the MCU, now that the rights were, reverted back to them to be able to use. And then, Iron Man is dead, Captain America is dead. A lot of people were dead or just retired or off the books. So it was kind of unfortunate to see, because that felt impossible. However, now it feels like we're going to get the best of both worlds, because in Secret Wars, we could get that team that I was just describing with all the favorites that we, assuming all of us grew up with, or at least like, know of the most. We could get all of them interacting together, mixed with maybe even the newer teams. Like, we could see 3 teams of Fantastic Four interact, or the old X-Men, the prequel X-Men from the other Fox movies, and our new X-Men team. Maybe we won't get any of that, but all I'm saying is the possibilities are endless with Secret Wars, and there's so much you could do with it that it's just so exciting. And it's honestly like a really, really good time to be getting in the MCU because of that. I mean, you could catch up, you could binge all this shit if you want, and then guess what? In a few years' time, it'll be reset, and you can start fresh, just like I was talking about the DC Comics did. And that's what this universe needs. Because think about it. We could get all those amazing cameos and interactions that we've been wanting from all these legacy characters, and then we could truly let them retire. I mean, I know the joke is, with Wolverine, till you're 90, and there's been some reports that that's actually not probably too far off because they want to continue with Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. But I believe that, if they reset the MCU in Secret Wars, they're going to do it all. They're going to reset the teams. That we're going to get a young, fresh X-Men. That was also said in this article. We're getting a young X-Men team. And I'm probably going to make a video going over who I would want that team to be built around, like what actors I would want for which characters, if you guys are interested in that. The Fantastic Four, that's kind of an interesting one. Because one theory I've kind of been rattling around in my brain is like, I thought it was a little bit odd where they put this new Fantastic Four team in their first movie. They kind of put them so far ahead, whereas, Reed and Sue are already having a kid. And I thought that was a little bit odd because I always pictured Reed and Sue, like if they were going to do an MCU version to make them younger so they could build towards that and have a lot more content. But I'm sure there's a reason for that in the plot of the movie. But also I'm wondering if the reason for that is like maybe they're just going to recast the Fantastic Four and this is just our temporary team. And it's like to subvert expectations. They got some actors. They're going to see if it works. I think that could actually be what they're doing. They're just going to see like how the public receives this new team, and if they like them, then they could just keep them because they're not that old to where it's absolutely ridiculous, but they're also not like super young to where it would be insane to recast them and start anew when they reboot the MCU. And that is honestly where I think that reboot, or that's where I think the difference between a reset and a reboot happens here, because I think what they're going to do is pull things that work and get rid of things that obviously don't, So, for example, they're doing a lot of fresh stuff like Mahershala Ali's Blade. And if that ever gets off the ground, I don't think they're going to give him a movie and then just reset and never, have him in the MC or recast him. So, I think they're going to pull stuff that works like Tom Holland's Spider-Man, Blade if they ever do that, the Fantastic Four, things like that. I think they're going to definitely pull and keep when they reset everything. And then other things, I think they're going to recast. Actually, now that I'm thinking of it, Kevin Feige did mention that they're going to recast eventually, obviously, key characters like Iron Man and Captain America, which is perfect because that gives us an opportunity to honestly kind of just start fresh and have a new opportunity at certain events. Like I was talking to my wife about it. We could have a Civil War that's more closely like follows the comics, and we could do it again and have it be fresh because we'd have a new Captain America, we'd have a new Iron Man, and with that we could have them interacting with or fighting with teams like the X-Men and the Fantastic Four at the same time. Whereas, obviously when we had Downey and Evans, we didn't have the X-Men or Fantastic Four in those movies. So I feel like they were kind of limited as to what they could do. Whereas if we get this MCU reboot, the possibilities are endless. And to me, that is so exciting. And I think it's a really, really good thing. And I think it's what we need right now. So I don't know. Let me know if you guys agree. Let me know if you think I'm crazy for thinking this way. But I am optimistic. I can't help it. I'm a sucker for the MCU, but also I have faith that they know what they're doing. So let me know if you guys agree down below. If you think, they're going to be going in a different direction with the reboot, just let me know what your guys' opinions are on this, because obviously there's so much ground to cover. And like I said, I'm going to be making other videos about some of the other stuff that Feige said in the interview, even though I kind of teased a little bit of it in here. I just think there's so much to go over that it calls for a minimum of like 2 videos, maybe 3, honestly, because even this one I can go on and on about, but I don't want to risk repeating myself more than I already have. So if you stuck around this long, I do appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed what I had to say, and I hope you're as excited about the future for this as I am.